He's the guy that...
Paul,
he came up with the idea.
I said to him, he came on with a statement that Paul came on and says, John Ellis just shot.
Because I first went on the Aspinwall board in 1951. And in February of 1952, we held our first joint meeting up at the Kerr School. Chick Eichenlaub was president of the O'Hara board at that time. And it was purely exploratory. There was two things that were motivating this. One was that O'Hara was growing and had a definite need for a larger school. They had been sending their students into Aspinwall on a tuition basis, and Aspinwall had become overcrowded. So it seemed natural to join the two together, but there was objections from O'Hara. Obviously, they were the big district now and wanted their own school. So these preliminary meetings, which started in 1952, were to see if we could come to a common ground. And that, as you know, later became rather difficult. But Aspinwall's problem was twofold. One, if O'Hara went independent, about 33% of the students in the Aspinwall system were from O'Hara. So you would not only lose those students, you would lose that tuition. Now, many people in Aspinwall said, well, let them go. But now comes the problem of the economics. When those 33% of the O'Hara students are gone, that part of the tuition, the tuition that contributed to the budget was gone. Well, we can manage without it. That was a great independence move. We can manage without it. But then came the second economic problem. As loyal as Blawnox was, as Indiana Township was, and they both sent students into Aspinwall. So if O'Hara became independent, they would be in such a position that their tuition would be considerably less than it would be to Aspinwall, because it's established on a fact of expenses per student. So, maybe well and good. Maybe the Blawnoxes and the Indianas would be loyal. But then there are people who are going to say, how come we're paying $800 a year to send these kids to Aspinwall when we could send them to O'Hara for $600? Now it became a critical problem because, you know, Aspinwall, 40% of the budget was made up of tuition students. So it was a necessity of Aspinwall. One of two things had to happen. You either had to stop O'Hara from being an independent district, or you had to, whatever, put down the shoe. We operated for, well, a year or less as a joint district, which was a 22-member board. And the next time I went on the ballot was enthusiastically endorsed. So that is when you took off, and this building was built finished in 1961, took its first students in 1962. I know that.
There was another thing that forced O'Hara's hand, and that was that ultimately we ended up with students in 12 different school districts.
13.
All right, 13 different school districts. The city of Pittsburgh was the only really available district for additional students. City of Pittsburgh would take more.
Well, we let them stay. Well, you let them stay for 2 years, and when this high school was built, so that they could graduate from the school they were attending. Yeah. And we were busing students to 13 different high schools for 2 years. This school was built in '61, and they were permitted to come in 60. They could finish at their receiving high school.
My point. Somewhere along the line, someone came along and created a new borough. Now, each of these original municipalities, Aspinwall, Blawnox, O'Hara, and Indiana, had a school district, which was coterminous with the municipality itself. But along about 1933 or 4, someone created a thing called Fox Chapel Borough, which nibbled off a good piece of O'Hara, a good piece of Indiana, and a little sliver of Harmer. Fox Chapel Borough never had a school district. We were happy to see that we could take these 4 school districts, which did not contain the name Fox Chapel, and create a new school district which did contain the name Fox Chapel. There was a certain amount of greed involved in this, because we figured if we got out a bond issue and the name was Fox Chapel Area School Authority, it would be better recognized by people in Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, and so forth, than if we had called it Indiana Township, Allegheny County, School District Authority.
We worked at that together because we were men of goodwill, and we only cared, people of goodwill, because we had 2 wonderful ladies on the board. We only cared about getting the job done effectively. And when we could agree that this is the effective and proper way to do it, we did it that way. And nobody objected.
I think it goes back to what I consider the key phrase in the Declaration of Independence, in which it says, a decent respect to the opinion of others.
Yes.
And I think that's what we had, a decent respect to the opinion of others. We listened, and that was that.
Sharpsburg ultimately became part of the district in 1969. Sharpsburg had been left dangling by the county board in their overall plan for consolidating the systems. Fox Chapel area schools were Blawnox, O'Hara, which bordered on Sharpsburg, they were going one direction. Etna and Millville were going the direction of Shaler. And Sharpsburg was left dangling. And many people may not know this, but ultimately it was Fox Chapel Board that made the overtures to Sharpsburg. Sharpsburg had been trying to wedge into the district through years, and in 1969, Fox Chapel Board made the overture to Sharpsburg.
Well, there are a couple of memories come quickly to the forefront. I think after all of what they've been talking about took place, and was mentioned here, the architect was hired and the building was on the drawing board. I think the first big event was the groundbreaking for this high school. At that time, Field Club Road behind us here was a cinder road, and the slope that where we now have the field hockey field was more of a bank all the way down to the level portion of the field, which is, I think most everyone knows by now, it used to be an airfield. But someone had come out in all the tangle of weeds and thistles and had staked out with rope the outline, the intended outline of the school. And on a given day for a groundbreaking, they bussed all of the students who were in the Fox Chapel area school district buildings, not the youngsters who were out on tuition at the other buildings, but from Kerr School and Boyd and Fairview and Aspinwall and Blawnox and the other buildings, came, and all teachers and students were invited to bring shovels. And that at a given signal, then everyone turned a spade of shovels, or dirt rather, and it was a massive groundbreaking. It was a little bit muddy, as I recall. But out here where the auditorium side of the building is, they had a very large fire truck, if you recall, a hook and ladder arrangement, and they had a photographer way up at the top so they could get the panoramic view of what was going on, and that picture ultimately made it on Into Life magazine, as I recall, of everyone participating in the groundbreaking.
It was about in November, if I recall, one of our board members was a PR man for a local utility company and suggested this and called me up, and I was the business manager. I was elected the business manager, and I was in charge of buses. And he suggested this plan, this program, and I said, well, that sounds pretty good. But when he said he wanted each kid to bring a shovel, I said, you got to be kidding. 60 kids in the bus with shovels. I thought he was kidding, but he meant it.
We took a lot of abuse.
I don't know how many buses we had with kids coming
They were all lined up along that cinder road up there.
That would have been Frank Leidy.
Yes.
Oh, it would be.
Yeah.
But
People
Yes,
gas.
People's
People's gas.
Natural
We've been
Gas.
shoveling it ever since.
At subsequent meetings in the county area for administrative groups, principals and so forth, we took quite an ear beating after that made the news. They said, well, you had everyone come with a shovel to dig the foundation. Now, if you could just get every kid to bring a brick or a board or a nail, you could maybe build this thing for half the cost.
Starting salary for teachers was $4,000. And I remember that we were talking about janitorial staff too, and I didn't think $4,000 was enough for a beginning teacher, and because we operated by committees at that time, you remember, and I said, well, we're going to need to set a starting salary for janitors. And I forgot which board member, well, what do you suggest? I said $4,000. And the person said that I talked to said, my God, that's what we're paying teachers starting. I said, yeah, I know. And we paid our starting janitors $4,000, and we paid our beginning teachers $4,000 at that time.
Royal McBee was a card file system, and they were, as I recall, about 6 by 8, and we had them printed to our specification, which was what the courses were that students would be enrolling to take. And then there were areas around the perimeter of the card which you could notch with a type of paper punch. It just was a triangular shaped notch. So that if you took all the 9th grade students and put them in a cluster and put your ice pick through chemistry, or well, that's not such a good example for 9th grade, Algebra 1, and then you could lift that pile up with the ice pick and shake, and everything would fall out that had been notched in that particular subject area.
Expression shake and bake came from.
Well, and anyhow, that's the way. That was an early predecessor to, of course, what happens now with computer programming. But I can remember spending a lot of days in the summer ice picking our way through the schedule.
But they had so many traditions, and the first meeting I ever attended, they said, "Have you got a hat?" I said, "Yeah, I have a hat. Why?" He says, "Well, when spring comes, you've got to put your hat in your hand and go to the various high schools and say, how many kids will you take?" We sent kids to Oakmont, but we would ask Oakmont. First we'd go to Aspinwall, obviously, and say, how many can we get in there this year? And they'd say 12 or 16. And then we'd go to Oakmont, and then we'd go to Etna and Shaler. We were all over the place sending kids. And that was, you go with a hat in the hand, begging to, where can you put your kids on tuition? So Indiana had always paid tuition somewhere, and our population much preferred to go to Aspinwall. Well, then you had a tremendous busing problem all over the place to get your kids to the school. And that was our reason for wanting, in any jointure, to get a high school of our own where the kids could have some spirit or feeling of being part of a group instead of a disparate group like that was. And it wasn't funny, but I couldn't understand that. If you got a hat, because you're going to put it in your hand and go begging.
Our first contract was before Act 195. We had a contract with the teachers that was before and worked out before Act 195 made it a necessity that you do. A little bit of a comparison, we went from having probably 30 or to 40 meetings to get a contract, couple strikes, to the last contract we had with the teachers. There were 2 teachers and myself that met, I don't know how many times, let's say 5 to 10 times, that worked out the contract without any fanfare or hostilities or anything else. So we've come a long way, baby, in the kind of a relationship and how we handle that. And it was through experience, really.
I want to try. I'll pass.
I would.
Well, I think Excuse me, I'll unpass a bit.
Okay,
I think we've just got to keep on the same track we are now with an absolute preeminence, and scholastically and academically. And I also think we've got to keep abreast of technological changes that are taking place. The curriculum today is so far removed from any curriculum I could possibly have conceived 30 years ago. Good heavens, we're moving from the ice pick sorting to a big advanced IBM punch cards. Now look at it. But we've just got to maintain the same direction and the same momentum.
I would think that one of the things that was a hallmark of the school district in the past, and if we're looking to what kind of beacon we'd like to follow for the future, would be that there was, I think, a strong commitment in the school district on the part of the board and the staff and the administration, and I think to a large measure in the general populace, to do the things that were best for the school as a group.
Somewhere in the neighborhood of 75% of the people that live in our school district have no direct connection to the school district, other than maybe through taxes, either wage or real estate taxes. And we need to make sure that those people have a feeling of interest in the system, for whatever reason that might be. But we've got to make sure that they too want us to go ahead, because without them it's going to be difficult.
Your newsletters tend to do.
I know a professor at the University of Pittsburgh, when we first started to talk about this, and he found out what the mix was in this community, he said, you're going to have an outstanding school district because you've got people from the blue-collar class all the way up to the professional staff. And I'll remember, Fred Hague remembers this, we took our track team to Mount Lebanon for a track meet, and had a crowd there. It was a relay team where kids from all over the area came, and they would call as the time for an event would come on. The announcer would say Valley High School, and that the team was to run out in the middle of the field, and then they'd call Mount Lebanon. And when they called Fox Chapel, we had two black youngsters and 2 white youngsters walked out, and Fred Hague said they heard a gasp when they saw 2 black kids running out from Fox Chapel. They didn't believe that Fox Chapel had any black or any, just it was all, you know, a white community. And I forgot who told the story about that. That I met one day. He said, I couldn't believe that the mix that you people have out there. Well, we had coal mining, farming, and the whole gamut. People are very proud to belong to the Fox Chapel School District. In fact, they even brag about it. I've been in meetings of sort where they would talk, I mean, from other areas. And I've heard people who, a friend of mine who complained about it all the time, about the school district not having any, this should have been O'Hara High School, stand up and brag about the school district. His 4 kids going to college because of the fact that they had a good academic program and had no problem getting into schools.